Newcastle, a city that just begs to be photographed. A city that's finding its feet in a post-industrial age. A city that is incredibly photogenic and is just 15 minutes drive from home. Perhaps that's why I keep returning to this beautiful place time and time again. And perhaps that's why I shot this image. But how did I shoot it? What was the story behind it? And more importantly, how did I edit it? Let's get into it. So if you've followed me for a while, you'll know that Tanya and I moved from Ukraine via London up to the northeast of England. So I've only lived here for 2 or 3 years, but Newcastle has become one of my go-to locations for photography. And in part, the reason for that are the spectacular bridges across the Tyne. And there's none more spectacular than the Tyne Bridge. I've shot it countless times. But every time I shoot it, it's from a different angle. There are so many different angles which you can shoot this beautiful bridge. And the light can vary from those sort of gloomy black and white days all the way through to spectacular sunrises that you see in the image that I'm talking about today. But what was the story of this image? Well, I'd love to tell you that it was pre-planned months in advance using an ephemeris and working out where the light was going to fall, planning with weather apps, but it just wasn't. I bought a second-hand Fujifilm GFX and this was the second shoot I went out with just to get some more practice. I got up very early in the morning, headed down to the quayside at Newcastle and just started shooting. This actual shot was taken from the Swing Bridge, another of my favourite bridges and one that I do photograph a lot. But it was actually taken on top of the Swing Bridge and I could only just get the Tyne Bridge and its reflection in using the 32 to 64mm lens on medium format. Zoomed out to 32mm, I struggled to get the image fully in, the reflection at the bottom. If I moved back too far, I started to get the railing of the Swing Bridge in. If I raised it up, the perspective became different and it didn't work. So there was a lot of time spent just minutely adjusting that shot with the tripod and the camera. And as I said, the camera was a Fujifilm GFX 50S. It was the original GFX camera, the original 50 megapixel camera, not the more recent one, but it's one that I sold and I explain that in this video here. The tripod was my trusty old Manfrotto C055 carbon fibre. I've had it for about 15 years and I was using a Manfrotto ball head, one that was sturdy enough to take the weight of the GFX, another of the reasons that I actually sold that camera. I took multiple images at this location, both in portrait and landscape format, as well as along the quay shooting the bridges from different angles and different locations. All in all, it was a spectacular morning. The light was absolutely glorious and I got some really nice shots. But this one really stuck out and this one is the one that I've sold the most prints of. So let's get into Lightroom and have a look at it and see how I edited that shot. And I'll also explain why I shoot pretty much all the shots I take in tricky lighting by using a 5-stop bracket and merging them in HDR. Let's get into Lightroom. So here we are in Lightroom and I have the 5 original images from the bracket here in this collection. Now the reason I always shoot brackets in tricky lighting is just because you can boost the dynamic range. Now these are GFX 50 files, they've got massive dynamic range, but they're perhaps no more dynamic range than my Sony Alpha 7 R5. So anything you can do to boost that dynamic range in tricky lighting conditions is a good thing. Now these are only 2/3 of a stop difference. I don't go for 1.5 stop difference. I do a 5 image bracket, 2/3 of a stop, and that's enough to give me in the darker image plenty of detail in the highlights and in the lighter image plenty of detail in the shadow areas. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to merge these and we just grab the 5 of the images like that, we right click and we go photo merge to HDR. Now I don't auto align in this particular case because the images were shot from a tripod. I always use auto settings, it's much better, and I don't use any deghosting in this particular image because there's hardly any movement other than some traffic moving across the bridge. So let's wait for this to preview. And there we go. So we'll click merge and wait a few seconds for that to get together. These are enormous files. I think each one is a 110 megabit raw file, so it does take a little bit of time. Surprisingly quick on an M2 Mac Pro though. So there we go. This is the image actually merged together right here. So we're going to take that image and we're going to take it over to develop module, and we're just going to do a little bit of treatment to it. As you can see, it looks pretty spectacular already, but I think we can enhance it a little bit more. You can see down here on the right, as I was talking about the railing just clipping into the shot here from the swing bridge. That was a tricky thing, but in this case we can crop that out a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to bring down the exposure slightly. It's a little bit brighter than I would like. So we'll bring that down just a touch like that. And that's brought it down to just to the point where the shadows are starting to clip. We'll bring the whites up to the point where the highlights are just about to clip, just like that. And that's given us the maximum contrast. We're also going to bring the highlights down a little bit further to bring some more detail into that sky, just like that. And we'll bring the shadows up to see if we can bring just a little bit more detail underneath that bridge. And as you can see, we do have some detail under the bridge there. And I'm going to bring the exposure down just a little bit more, like that. So the first thing I want to do is just enhance this sky a little bit. It's pretty spectacular as it is, but I think we could just have a little bit more saturation. So we're going to go to the mask select tools here, and we're just going to select on sky. Wait for that to kick in, and as you can see, it's just selected the sky. We're now going to bring that exposure down very, very slightly. We don't know if we bring it too far, it just looks very unnatural. So we bring it down very, very slightly, like that. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to cool that sky off very slightly as well. Just a touch on the temperature down to about -6. And we're just going to bring the saturation up. The secret to keeping it looking fairly natural is just to use the tools very, very subtly. And there we go. We've got a nice looking sky. It looks nice and blue. We've maintained the orange in the sunrise in the background here. And we're now going to enhance that a little bit. We're going to add a new mask, and it's going to be a radial gradient mask. And we're just going to draw around that area of orange sky there. I've feathered it to about 74. Because if we had a really tight feather on it, you'd get a very defined line. So by bringing the feather out, you will get a much more natural look. And what we'll do again is we'll just bring the exposure down very, very slightly, like that. And as you can see, as I bring the exposure down, the sky becomes a bit more defined. But I don't want it to be that defined, and I'll show you how we're going to get out of that in a second. We're going to bring the temperature up very, very slightly to add a little bit more glow into that sky. And then we'll bring the saturation up very, very slightly. It's all about subtle movement, and if I whack the exposure up, it looks way, way too saturated. So if I bring it up about 5 or 6 units like that, it looks much more natural. Now, to make that cloudiness, that sort of sharp defined clouds in the background look a little more subtle, all we're going to do is we're going to scroll down whilst in this mask to clarity, and we're just going to back the clarity off. If I bring the clarity up, it will make it more defined, as you can see, like that. But if I back the clarity down, it softens it very, very slightly, and it gives a much more natural looking background to the sky there. So that looks pretty good. But I think the other thing we would like to do is enhance the reflections on this bridge in the Tyne here. And the way we do that is very, very simple. We're going to create another mask, and we're going to use the linear gradient mask. And we're going to drag it up from the bottom, and the more you drag it, the bigger feather you get. We don't need an immense feather, so we're going to have a little bit of feather on it. And then we go to the center of the mask and just drag it up to the point where the river is meeting the horizon, like that. And what we'll do is we're just going to enhance this reflection a little bit. We're going to bring the exposure down a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some blue to it using the color temperature tool. We'll just cool it down very slightly in the same way we did with the sky to make it match the sky. And then we're going to bring the saturation up like that to match the sky. And the secret to getting a better reflection is to come down to the effects palette and just increase the clarity. You see, if I slide it to the left, it becomes a little bit less defined. And if I slide it to the right, it becomes a little bit more defined as a reflection. And that looks good. Now there's one other little thing I'd like to try and do if possible, and that's enhance this speeding bus up here. And to do that, again, we're going to use a radial gradient. We're just going to come up here and do a very, very small radial gradient. If I press the space bar and then left click, that will zoom me in up here. And what we're going to do is just enhance the yellows in this area. So we're going to use the point color and we're going to select yellow and we're going to increase the saturation of the yellow. Now if we play around with the range a little bit, that will bring some more of the yellow parts of the bus in, and that looks pretty good. Press spacebar again and left click, that brings us back. You can see we've enhanced that bridge on the bus there and we've got a really nice looking image. All we're going to do now is we're going to try and crop out this railing here. So if we go to the crop tool and we'll bring it up a little bit and we'll bring it in a little bit just to the edge of the bridge there. We'll bring this side in as well to maintain the ratio. And as you can see, we've still got a little bit there, but we can clone that out. So if we go to the remove tool, we're actually going to use the cloning tool. We're going to select a brush size just big enough. We're going to click there, and then we're just going to cover that up like that. And I think that will do it. If we go back to the main palette, there we have our finalized image. And if I go back to the library module, you'll see that there are some of the other images that I did on this particular shoot, including one of my car, using very similar techniques to enhance the bridge and the sunrise. And further down on the quayside here, we have again got the beautiful light reflecting off the underneath of the bridge. And as you can see, it just makes Newcastle such a spectacular place to shoot. And it's not just here. There are so many fantastic locations to shoot in Newcastle. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I love this shot. It's one of my favourite shots from the last perhaps decade. It's one that just really works for me, and I think it's one that tells the story of Newcastle as well. The fact that it's my best-selling print tells a story, not just to people that are from this area, but it is sold to people that have moved from this area around the world. I've sold copies to the United States and various other countries around the world as well. If you'd like to get a print of this particular image, the link is in the description below on my website. You can order prints. If you'd like a larger format print, let me know and I can arrange that specifically. So this is the first of what might be a series of art of the image style videos where I talk about the story behind the shot and the story behind the editing of the shot and why I did things a certain way. The plan is to do this once a month, and if you would like to see more, let me know in the comments below. If there's a particular photograph of mine that you would really like to understand how I shot it and how I edit it, again, let me know in those comments below and I'll see if I can put that into the schedule and create a video about it. If you've enjoyed this video, please give me a like, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.